This week, we welcome two neighbors, ladies and gentlemen, Charles McDowell, and Logan Herring. Charlie is retired partner at Potter Anderson, where he was the chair of the firm's business group. He's currently CEO of Eastside Community Learning Center Foundation, where he supports Eastside Charter School, and board chair of Reach Riverside Development Corporation. Logan is CEO of the WRK Group, a collective of nonprofits working together to revitalize the Riverside neighborhood in Northeast Wilmington, just 2.6 or so miles down the Brandywine from the Highlands.
So welcome, gentlemen. We'd like to start with your sense of the Highlands. Charlie, what are your favorite spots and memories in this neighborhood?
Well, I think Rockford Park's got to be one of the favorite spots, but we live in a one-block section of 16th Street, which is just such a lovely place. And my favorite recollection might very well be when we moved in a steaming hot July when my wife was 8 months pregnant with our first child in 1975. Okay.
Yeah, so that's helpful. I was going to say you grew up. So if I get this right, you grew up in Virginia. You're a national teenage golf phenom, which every one of my male friends reminds me and raves about. Attended Princeton, UVA Law. Give us a little bit of sense of how you came to Delaware and to this neighborhood in 1975. What was the journey?
I came to Delaware because my wife and I were in graduate school in Charlottesville, and I had decided I didn't want to go back to Virginia Beach and Norfolk. She didn't want to go back to West Virginia. We wanted a middle-sized town in the mid-Atlantic area, and Wilmington was the right size, the right location. And Tommy Evans, who was the U.S. House Representative of Delaware, was a friend of ours because he married a woman who I knew from Virginia Beach. Ah. So I called Tommy and I said, if I came to Wilmington, who would I want to work for? He said, well, you want to call Charlie Crompton, Dick Sutton, and okay, can't remember the third, whoever. But in any event, so came interviewed. And
Charlie Richards, of
course. Yes, that's right. So came and, got job offers and accepted.
All right. Never look back, stuck around. Now, meantime, Logan, you're a few years, Charlie's junior, also a sports phenom in your own right. Just a few blocks east of 95. You've shown me the neighborhood. I don't know if I got it right. Trinity, Quaker Hill, is that right? Is that warm?
Closer to like the Trinity vicinity, yeah.
Trinity vicinity, right. So tell us a little bit about growing up there and your experience, your perspective on this neighborhood in the Highlands.
So interestingly, I grew up closer to Trinity vicinity, now known as West Center City, really where the mayor has put an emphasis on this neighborhood. To put it in more context, it's a neighborhood between 95 and downtown Wilmington. Grew up in a single mother household who is here now helping me with my 4-year-old son in the other room. So if you hear something in the background, that's them. But they're kind of used to this at this point. And I was very fortunate, unlike nearly everybody else that grew up in my neighborhood, I had access to resources. My grandfather, who, if many of you have been in Wilmington for a number of decades, you would probably know or have worked or have read about my grandfather, the late Reverend Otis Herring, who was visually blind, but was a pastor for Union Baptist Church. And eerily enough, I found out recently, and I know we'll probably get into this at some point if we have time, but my grandfather did everything that I'm doing now, housing, affordable housing, early learning, community service, redevelopment, everything that we're doing now. And I don't even know if Charlie's heard this, but he set up multiple entities, all different nonprofits, and he was the glue that bound them together. Yeah. So I knew nothing about that until a couple of months ago. But back to my point I was trying to make, my grandfather, because he was fortunate enough to be successful in his own right, he paid for me to go to Wilmington Montessori through 2nd grade, where my son is now currently attending. Then I went to public school for 3rd to 8th grade, went to St. Mark's for 2 years, and went to Sanford for 2 years. So you talk about a diverse background. And I believe that is truly the reason why I'm able to connect and have conversations with a diverse set of people that really make up this diverse population that we have in Wilmington. In terms of the Highlands neighborhood, I would say my most fond recent memory is, and I don't know if you guys consider this necessarily your neighborhood, but 40 Acres, I believe I'm saying that correct. It's a small restaurant right across the street from the Kentmere Rehabilitation Center. Excellent food and breakfast or brunch on the weekends.
Yeah, that comes up a lot here, doesn't it, Linz?
It definitely does. One of my favorites. So Logan, you just spoke about your grandfather. What is one of your most distinctive memories of him? And then what do you feel, how could you sum up what his legacy is to Wilmington?
So he passed when I believe I was 12, 1990, no, I might've been 14. But being visually blind, my most fond memory, and it seems a little probably to many people that I might tell this to, but he would always have money in his wallet. And when I would come in, he would call me Logo. Come here, Logo. And he would dig in his wallet and he'd have everything from $1 bill to $100 bill. But somehow he knew, is the way he folded the money or how it felt, I would never get that $100 bill. I might be fortunate on my birthday or some other time to get a $20 bill, but I never got that $100 bill. But he always took care of me in ways, and I think he really paved the way. And in terms of what he meant or what he means to me in this community, I hear about it every day, whether it's from Tom Carper, our U.S. Senator, to people in the community. I was talking to BB Coker today on the phone, and she was just telling me how many people appreciate what I'm doing because it's similar to my grandfather's work. And it's not that we are doing great work, but we're doing so with integrity and character. And she said, to have my predecessor, and this kind of is a segue probably to the next aspect of this conversation, but my predecessor at Kingswood, having made some very poor decisions and jeopardizing an institution that's been in the neighborhood for 1946, she just really appreciated, and many people in the community appreciate the way we're approaching the work and doing so with integrity. And I would say with a sense of pride with the community. So I'll leave that at that.
Well, that is a pretty amazing story about the $100 bill. And it's also really cool, the connection that you are making directly and being able to carry on his legacy with the work that you're doing every single day. Just a quick reminder, folks, if you have any comments, feel free to ping them in the chat, or you can message me directly if you're not comfortable pinging your question directly. Charlie, let's switch to you. You've helped the Riverfront redevelopment, Eastside redevelopment, and now Riverside. What experience catalyzed your civic engagement in Wilmington?
What catalyzed my engagement in Wilmington? Well, I was very fortunate to go to an outstanding boarding school for 2 years, Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. And there was something about the tradition of that school that promoted community engagement, I guess. And so I've sort of always felt that I had a passion for that from very young times. And during my legal career, I made an effort to be out and about and get things done in the community, but really never had well, let's say I didn't take the time back when I was workaday world. So it wasn't until when I retired in 2005 or 6 that I really now had full time to devote to community activities. And so that's sort of how I got where I am.
So guys, my origin story is sort of my path to your door. I'll just briefly share with everyone, which is I'm a runner and a bike rider, and I was going down the river. I'm the new guy in the neighborhood, and I couldn't quite figure out.
You keep saying that, but he's not the new guy.
Well, it still feels new to me, right? Like after 25
No,
years in one town, 1 year in this town feels new. And I was just so surprised that at a certain point, it felt like the lush greenery and Logan, to your word, the resources just ended at that one bridge. And as it ends up, I've come to find that's kind of like a marked line, right? And you guys have helped me understand this for the room, for the folks assembled and everyone else. Like, what kind of forces create that kind of discrepancy? What kind of forces specifically in Wilmington created the discrepancy where a neighborhood like the Highlands is so well resourced and a neighborhood like Riverside is not? And Logan, how did you and Charlie come together to really work together to turn the tide there.
Logan,
Yeah, Charlie, do you want me to go? Or you want-
well, I think I think you ought to talk about, what has made Wilmington the segregated community that it is today, because you were here during that time and you lived it more than I did. Well, maybe you weren't, but
I wasn't alive.
you
I don't know.
you tell the story better than I do. So you tell that story.
Thanks. So Wilmington's, not unlike many other communities around this country. As a matter of fact, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, as well. We're working with a nonprofit technical assistance. Actually, let me stop. Let me reverse that. I'm not using the term nonprofit anymore. We call them tax exempt businesses because we really do operate as a business. And I think nonprofits get a negative connotation associated with them. But back to the story. So there are about 850 communities or neighborhoods like this around the country. And we're working with purpose-built communities that provides technical assistance for neighborhoods that want to see holistic change, for neighborhoods that have been segregated and have been facing the many barriers and oppressions that have plagued our society across this entire country. So Wilmington is like many other communities around this country. And we could go back, I think a lot of us have learned more than we probably have learned in a lifetime over the past year and a half. But housing segregation really took a toll on this country. $120 billion of federally subsidized mortgages went out into this country post-World War II, somewhere around that era. And out of the $120 billion of mortgages that went out, 98% were available to white families. This allowed white families to purchase homes in neighborhoods that Black families were not allowed to purchase homes, and Blacks were then relegated to neighborhoods like Riverside. Interestingly enough, the Riverside public housing community was built initially for white veterans from war. And when whites had the ability to purchase homes in the Highlands and the Greenvilles and the Hokessons, Blacks had to move into neighborhoods like Riverside. And then when you layer on top the criminal justice system and how during the crack epidemic, we treated it as a criminal justice issue versus a health issue as we're treating the opioid epidemic right now. 1 in 4 African-American males between the ages of 20 and 29 were imprisoned or on parole. And then public housing policy stated that if you're a returning citizen from prison, you can't live in public housing. And the result today is that 87% of our households are led by single women, because Delaware has the second highest recidivism rate in the country, where within 3 years, if you are returning from prison, you're going right back to prison at a 65% clip. So when you just add on those layers, and those are just a few, you now see a community that is led by 87% households led by single women. You're seeing a lack of resources, a lack of community.
May have to prep yourself after all there, Charlie. I think someone pulled the plug on his Wi-Fi.
Family with a two-parent household where you have, how many of us on this screen can live? Oh, I'm sorry, I froze, but I'll just, again, the average household income in the Riverside neighborhood is less than $10,000. So I don't know how many of us on this screen can live with a $10,000 annual income. And that is the situation that our community finds itself in. But keep in mind that our community did not put itself in this position. So that's something that we keep top of mind when we look to eradicate and eliminate a lot of the barriers that have been stacked up over time. And then Charlie, I don't know if you want to answer, I believe the question was, how did like these two worlds collide?
Yeah.
Me coming from West Center City and then Charlie living in the Highlands neighborhood with our very diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, well, I should have said this earlier on when Lindsay asked me about my favorite sort of thought about Highlands, but it's more appropriate now because the Highlands played an absolutely critical role in why Logan and I are working together on this project. Because
I know where you're going with this, Charlie, I believe.
Well, but I think it's an interesting part of the story. It's an interesting part for Dennison and John Johnson and others who live here who know this story. But when I was at Eastside Charter School and having a very frustrating experience dealing with kids uh, I read about this project in Atlanta where they had dealt with a neighborhood very similar to the East Side Charter Riverside neighborhood. So I called my friend Mike Brzezicki, who lives across the street from me here on 16th Street, because I knew he would be interested in this. And he recruited Rob Buccini. We went to Atlanta. We saw what had been done down there. And we thought, man, this is great. We got to bring this back to Delaware. Well, we came back to Delaware and we started socializing the idea. And we got great response from everybody except from the Wilmington Housing Authority administration and the last mayor's administration. And that was critical because the Wilmington Housing Authority owns the Riverside Public Housing Project, which is right next door to East Side Charter School, right next door to Kingswood Community Center, and was absolutely necessary to do the neighborhood revitalization project that we're working on. So at that time, I learned that the mayor controlled the Wilmington Housing Authority by appointing 7 of the 9 commissioners. And Mike at that time was thinking about running for mayor. And I figured, well, the best thing I can do to move this project along is to get Mike elected mayor. So I signed on as a treasurer to his campaign. Actually, I was signed on to that role at a meeting I did not attend. In fact, I didn't even know, I wasn't even told about the meeting. I was told that I had become the treasurer. So we went to work. We spent about a year, and Highlands was absolutely critical because it was our 8th district that provided the votes that allowed Mike to win over Logan's, ironically, his best friend, Eugene Young. Without the Highlands, Mike would not have won the race for sure. And when he came into office, he appointed 6 new commissioners to the Wilmington Housing Authority. So we got the politics all right. The Wilmington Housing Authority signed on with Kingswood and East Side Charter and Logan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, we all became working on this project together. So the Highlands has had just absolutely critical role in this whole history.
So thank you to you all for helping Mike defeat my best friend in the mayoral election. I really appreciate it. But you know, in all honesty, we laugh about it today because it actually worked out, I think, in everyone's favor, most importantly, the broader community, because Eugene is now the cabinet secretary, the director of the Delaware State Housing Authority, which is the main agency with which we work to finance the housing that we're building. So it all ended up working out for the better. And I tell Eugene, I said, I'm glad you didn't become elected mayor because he has 2 young children, 6 and 3, who my son plays with on a regular basis, and a young family. And I was like, you would be divorced and your family would be kaput. It would be over because I see how demanding the job is on Mike whenever I'm in his presence. And one of my good friends is his personal assistant. So I see how demanding it is. So I say that in jest, but we really do appreciate what you all did. And if it's you on the screen or your neighbors, to get Mike elected, because it has been a decision that I think has worked out in the best for the community.
Well, so can you guys tell us a little bit more of the scope and breadth of the work happening today? And if I understand correctly, you got a pretty sizable investment recently, and there's also some effort to keep those funds coming. So maybe one of you guys wants to read us in a little deeper.
Keep going, Logan. You're doing good, Logan. You keep going.
I'd be happy to, as I change my background so you can kind of see the scope of this project. So I'll talk with big round numbers. $250 million, 600 mixed income homes to replace the existing public housing units that exist now, which is almost about 300 units. So a 2-to-1 replacement. A new $41 million, 100,000 square foot state-of-the-art Kingswood Community Center, which was my background before I switched it to this one. And then the state-of-the-art teen center, known affectionately as the warehouse to many, where our very own president visited with us exactly a year ago on election day, as it is a tradition where he started his service in the community as a lifeguard at the pool, which was renamed after him 3 years ago. And another shout out to my grandfather. My grandfather was the first community member that endorsed his political career. So 600 homes, $41 million community center, state-of-the-art teen center, not to mention what we plan to do along Northeast Boulevard, which was the main thoroughfare before Interstate 95, which was also something that segregated our communities all across the country. So I think that speaks to what you're talking about in terms of the scope. A very large project, $250 million. And we have already leveraged, I think, close to $89 million of that, 26.4 that we just received a few weeks ago from the state of Delaware, courtesy of the governor and American Rescue Plan Act dollars.
Well, and we should say too, Logan, and I know you would have, that the 26.4 million is targeted for housing. And we still need $20 million to build this new Kingswood Community Center we want. So
well, we actually even, so now I'm gonna follow up. We need 30 to build the new. We have the community center is 41. We've raised 11.5. We have requested an additional 20 from the state of Delaware, and then we have some other fundraising prospects to fill the remainder of the gap. And it looks like Brian DeSabatino is on here tonight, and EDIS is most likely going to be the construction manager for the new Kingswood Community Center. Brian has been a tremendous help, to say the least, with everything we're doing around real estate and particularly Kingswood Community Center. And I see him with the thumbs up.
So to follow that up, I might as well get a plug in here for Eastside Charter and what's going there too, because Eastside Charter really was the beginning of this whole project, and Eastside Charter is in the process.
Hey, Charlie, I'm sorry. Apologies in advance. If we could just pause, Dave Ford, our chief financial strategist, mostly known to many as a CFO, just sent me a photo while we're on the screen. I want to give another shout out to the state of Delaware, because we also received $10 million from the bond bill this year. And he just sent me a picture of a $10 million check he received in the mail from the state of Delaware. So it's something cool to speak about the level of support that we have from not just our mayor who we spoke, but our county, our city, our governor, and the state of Delaware. And we got a lot of national support as well. I'm sorry, Charlie, but I just had to throw that in there because I get excited. I remember the days we used to get excited for $10, and now we're looking at $10 million checks. So again, my apologies. Yeah.
That's great. Well, that was a great interruption. So Eastside Charter is in the process now of a $13 million project to build a new state-of-the-art STEM center, STEM hub for the community, which will also serve as the home of its middle school honors program, which will be STEM focused and community focused. And that building will be part of the entrance into where the new housing is. So it'll be one of the first things that people see when they come in to approach our new housing. And we'll be in the community. On Monday, there'll be an announcement of a major donor pledging $4 million to that project. So that's a big start, but we'll be having to raise a good deal more money too.
Lindsay, taking the next one, or you want me to pick up?
Well, actually, we had a question from Dennison, right? So
Great.
opportunities will the residents have in this new project, the existing residents? What kind of new opportunities will it create?
Sorry, I broke up on you. Could you repeat that?
Logan, the question is what consideration is giving to the people that are living there now in terms of—
Number one priority.
Okay.
Number one priority, bar none, hands down. We are very fortunate that in our project, unlike many of these projects around the country, we have the ability to build about 200 homes on vacant land before having to demolish anything. Most of these projects don't have available land when you're working in urban areas. We are very fortunate that we do, because homes were demolished over a decade ago. So that land has remained vacant. Also, we're not just moving folks across the street without preparation and support. What we're finding and working with an initiative that we just started calling Empower, which really focuses on economic mobility and self-sufficiency. I would say it, and I think Charlie's finally agreeing with me, we want to put ourselves out of business. We want the community to be self-sufficient. I believe tax exempt businesses exist to fill a gap, but not to be a permanent crutch. So as we invest and empower $1 million annually, it is all around working with our families to become economically mobile. And also the North Star is to be able to purchase a home in the neighborhood. So we have a mixed income approach to this, where we have everything from market rate rental to the deeply subsidized rentals, but also home ownership units that will be a part of this. And our goal is that working with a diverse community, we can benefit, or they can benefit from one another. And what we're finding right now is that many of our existing residents are in crisis mode. And what I mean by crisis mode is we approach them with this framework of, we want to focus on financial literacy and, workforce development skills and continuing education. And we have mothers that come in and say, I don't have food to feed my children. My electric is cut off. I don't have a car to get my child to the doctor's office. It's addressing, it's triage, basically. It's making sure we address the immediate needs and then stabilizing them so they can then move on to prosperity. So these are the things that we have to do with our community. And on top of that, let's throw on a global pandemic. And then on top of that, let's throw on Hurricane Ida on top of that to the adjacent neighborhood and see how that fares for you. So, it's one thing for folks, and I'm just going to assume if you're in a Highlands community that if your house gets flooded or your car gets flooded, that you might have, a little bit of resiliency built up in your bank account, or you might have a place to go stay. We still have people from Hurricane Ida that are displaced and living in motels and hotels. So anyway, I know that went on a tangent, but hopefully that responds to your question, that the existing residents are our #1 priority, but we also want to make this community a community that is so attractive and has the amenities that anyone would who has choice, want to come and live in this neighborhood. And that's what Charlie and I see when we go down to Atlanta and see the Drew Charter School. Charlie will say all the time, it looks like the school would take off and go to the moon. And they said they wanted to build the best school possible in the country. We want to build the best community center possible in the country. And he's already talked about the improvements that Eastside Charter is bringing to bear. And we already talked about, with the warehouse is also adding it as an amenity in the neighborhood as well for our teams.
Thank you, Logan. In response to the hurricane, there was the Logan tornado that has come in and stirred things up, which is terrific.
I haven't heard. That's a new one. I'll have to coach you on that one. We take pride in being disruptors for a positive cause.
Yeah. Guys, I'm gonna ask a question, then Jan Jessup has one, so I'll ask her to unmute in a sec. I'm interested, you both have this shared experience as championship athletes, and I'm wondering how that manifests in your shorthand, in your individual experiences, in the way that you lead, if at all.
Logan?
Why are you laughing? That's a legit question, man. Like, come on, you're big deal.
It is a legit question. I think that's why we're laughing, because I don't know who's more competitive, me or Charlie. Sometimes we compete with each other, and then we got to remember we're on the same daggone team. But I think that's it. It's for me, and I'm really so. I think you said you were going to bring this up, Benjamin, but I still coach varsity high school soccer and basketball. I've been doing that for over 10 years, and all my free time, if you can imagine. I played collegiate soccer and basketball. Every team I've been on, I've been the captain. And since then I've been coaching, and I'm really big on building teams and getting people to play their role in order what's best for the team. We had a staff meeting today, and we went over our core values, and our #1 core value amongst one of 8, but the #1 bar none is community first.
Mm-hmm.
And every decision we make what's best for the community. And I equate that to what you do when you're on a team. It's you do what's best for the team, not necessarily what's best for you as an individual player. I don't want to speak for Charlie, but I am not going to take up golf anytime soon, because as competitive as I am against others, I am the most competitive with myself. And I think that is the definition of the sport of golf, but I'll leave that to Charlie to explain.
Well, I would say that the one characteristic of a champion athlete I think probably in all domains is the ability to really focus, to really concentrate.
Yeah.
And I know people have made that comment about me from time to time. And so I would say that that is a characteristic that I have that enabled me to succeed at the highest level in golf many years ago. But nevertheless, it sort of carries over. I mean, I still, when I tee it up every day, I'm still expecting to shoot par, even though I very rarely do it. But you know, that's the expectation.
That's terrific. So Jan Jessup has unmuted to ask her question.
Hi.
I've read it, so I can, you know, I don't want you to have to repeat it. I definitely understand.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. It's a great question.
But I don't know that the rest of the participants.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. You want to
Okay.
repeat it then, and then I'll respond.
Sure. Logan, it was interesting to me that a week or two ago, Mike Perzicki was commenting on the effects of school busing on kids in Wilmington. And he thought it had a very negative effect on many of them and their families because they were bused so far out of the area that they didn't form bonds with the other kids and their parents. It was hard for the parents of the bused children to attend meetings and conferences and be as involved with the school as they would be if it were more of a neighborhood school situation. So that was interesting to me, and I'm wondering if you're seeing that as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree. I think it's a contributing factor, but I don't believe it's a major factor. And what I mean by that is when we have these conversations about race, sometimes we just need to reverse the role. So I would ask all of you, if you're living in Highlands, if you're living in Hockessin, if you're living in Greenville, and you were to bus those students to a school in the Riverside, East Side chart, would your children still perform at a high level? And I'm going to assume that they would, because they would have the necessary support at home. When they come home to their community, they would have access to resources in the after school setting. And I'm actually going to lob this one in front of the rim, or put the ball right in front of the cup for Charlie, for a better analogy, because I think that Charlie's response will probably even better articulate because of the reason why he was looking at solutions and stumbled upon purpose built. It's not necessarily the school that is the unit of change, although the school is an important factor. But I believe the number one priority and the major contributor to this is the community and stabilizing community. So Charlie, like I said, I'll put this one right in front of the cup for you.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, when you hear comments about, oh, that's a bad school or whatever, in my experience, the academic performance of schools is just totally reflective of the demographics of the kids that are there, and it's the neighborhoods from which they come. And that's why the purpose-built approach is a neighborhood-focused approach. And so we want to totally improve the whole neighborhood so that everybody comes up with a great opportunity in life and great education in front of them, a great home life, nice, a comfortable place to live, good job, et cetera, all those things that are necessary for a vibrant life. And that's our desire for the kids at Eastside Charter. We want them all to be able to live choice-filled lives.
And I would, just to piggyback, the most important thing that I think we are doing is working with the families, because neighborhoods and communities are built by families. You have to start one family at a time. The community in whole, we have to break it down, and really that's what we're doing with Empower, stabilizing, empowering the families to be self-sufficient. And you bring in, we could replace and bring in 300 strong families and have a great community. And we choose, or we'd rather choose, to bring in some additional families, but we're really going to focus to rebuild, or not rebuild, but build up and empower the families to strengthen themselves with our support. And then we're really going to have a strong community.
So as your community neighbors, how can us as the Highlands help get involved and support our Riverside neighbors?
Well, we have a saying around here, it's about getting proximate to the work, and proximate just means getting close, whether it's obviously contributing to, financially is always like the number one thing. And if I don't say it,
Get your
Charlie will,
checkbooks out.
so I'll preempt to him. I think Benjamin's going to drop a link in. We are currently celebrating the 75th anniversary of Kingswood Community Center with 75 days of giving, the last 75 days of 2021. We are asking folks to contribute, whether it's $75 or $75,000 in tribute to Kingswood Community Center. Thanks for dropping that in, Benjamin. But I would say more importantly than just a one-time gift or continued financial support, we need partners, we need collaborators, we need supporters, we need people to understand exactly everything we're doing. This short interview or conversation or us being able to answer questions is not going to give you insight really to everything that we're doing, and it's very comprehensive. So we would invite you to join a lunch and learn session. It's an hour-long lunch and learn virtually. And then after that, if you feel inclined, you can come in and do a tour. We host tours, I would say at least once or twice a week, where you can come in and tour the warehouse. Trust me, you've never seen anything like it for teens in this city, state, or country. And it gives you an example of how our team can execute with fidelity in a very quick pace. And then we'll drive you around the neighborhood so you can see the housing, you can see where Kingswood is located, and you can see, you can literally see how the water is up over my head and the water lines on the fence and the devastation that this community has faced. And we continue to be resilient and press on because we have no choice. So I think that responds to that, but Charlie, I don't know if you have anything else. And I can drop my email in, or you can email me, and then I'll connect you with those on our team that can get you signed up for a luncheon.
No, that's great. I think being there in person and interacting with the residents is very, very important. It gives you a much better feeling for what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Also, just a plug for Eastside Charter. Eastside Charter has a very active mentoring program, and I will communicate with Ben, and we'll get out to you generally about that. But that's an easy way to come and participate and be helpful. 45 minutes a week.
Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much for joining us. You've been amazing guests, and I feel like I've learned so much about the community. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Benjamin, thank you for your leadership. Lindsay, thank you for hosting us. And Highlands, thank you for your support in the past, present, and in the future. We can do this, but we have to do it together.